Ooh, you didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Welcome, Brainiacs, to another very special episode of the LeatherBrainz podcast. My name is producer Scotty, and I am here with Alan Casanova Castro. And
Yo.
Daddy's gone. We can do whatever we want. We're running free reign on this podcast today.
Yep. We finally get the NFL season back into our pockets, and he decides to leave. He goes and gets married and runs off into the sunset as soon as we start the season. So congrats to him, but he's missing a good episode.
We had a fun time at the wedding, at least. We both got to go. It was at the zoo, which is cool.
Yeah,
we can now say
sweet.
that. I know you invited everyone to the after party last week, but that was all fake, turns out. But yeah, it was a good time. And congratulations to Hunter. Now that Hunter's not here, and his wife's definitely not going to listen to this because there's no way she does.
No shot.
We can vent about having to watch the Nebraska game on our phones. Let it out. You've been really nice to him this whole time, and
yeah.
I think it was from a place of just trying to be kind, but you're holding in your true feelings.
Yeah. No. Mixed emotions. It's his day. It was their day. It was their wedding. It was a Nebraska game. I think it's always a tough call when you get into the fall and you start planning weddings. There's never like an ideal time because everybody's got so much stuff going on, but especially I think for any of us that are in the Midwest, or if you're a Nebraska fan or, big time college football fan, like Saturdays are pretty sacred times, especially when there's not shit else going on, especially in Nebraska. Well, that's basically our pro team. I would say it was a good time because of the result. I think if it was a close game, I would have been a little bit more agitated that I had to sit there and like sweat it out at a wedding. But
we were all in the same boat, at least. Like the whole. It was funny at one point. All the dudes were all sitting at tables like surrounding little phone screens, and all the women were just having a party on the dance floor. So it actually was pretty fun. It worked out pretty good.
The only weird part was that technology, not all of us were synced, so somebody would cheer ahead of somebody else and you're like, okay, something good's gonna happen, what is it? And you're like, oh, sick. So that was weird. That was the only weird thing. Hey, but congrats to him. It was fine. It was a Nebraska kicked the shit out of Colorado, so it was a nothing. Basically just got to hang out and drink with some good buds and watch Nebraska win, so it was good.
Yeah, Hunter, I'm just giving you shit. I would miss any game for Hunter's wedding anytime forever. But hopefully that was the only one.
Okay, hold on. What if Nebraska somehow made the college football playoffs or was a national title and he had his wedding? Would you miss his wedding for that?
I was the best man. I wouldn't have the option. I would if I was just if I was in like your shoes or any of the just people who were just showing up to support him, I probably would have, but he wrote me into being the best man. So I don't think I would have a choice. It's like at that point I'm choosing between friendship or the game.
It's tough.
It's still kind of a hard decision.
It's tough. But congrats to him.
Congrats to him and the Huskers. Today, we are going to talk about Week 1 in the NFL. We're going to talk about some of the news, some of the unfortunate injuries that we saw, and then our Week 1 takeaways. And then most importantly, we're going to dive into Week 2 preview and our Kickoff Karaoke contest, which, if you don't know, we're all betting against the spread and against each other for 4 games every single week. At the end of the season, whoever got the most games wrong has to sing the national anthem live on the podcast, which is going to be really embarrassing for Alan when that day comes. But before we get into any of that, I have to remind you of our sponsor, Erica's Healthy Pet. This is a website, simple website. You go on there and you can buy treats. You can buy snacks for your dogs. They sell things like chicken jerky, beef jerky, cheese bites, and they also sell itch relief shampoo and other like skincare items. I have 2 German Shepherds. They're insane. They're crazy, and I'm trying to tame them down, train them to be civilized around other dogs and human beings. These treats have made a really big difference in that. So if you're interested in getting on board, you should go to ericashealthypet.com, use promo code LB20 to get 20% off. And by the way, this is a great way to support the show. So if you're like, man, these guys are great, I would like to give them my money, this is the way to do it. So go ahead and go to ericashealthypet.com, use promo code LB20 for 20% off. Let's kick things off here with the news. And we got a lot of bad news here, unfortunately. So we're just going to roll through it. Hopefully we don't get too depressed. First things first, Jordan Love. This one, a little bit of a bright side, because when Jordan Love hurt his knee in that game, you all saw the slow motion videos of that knee popping. It looked like, oh shit, this guy is never going to play football again. But it turns out it's an MCL sprain, and that means he's going to miss at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, but it's not like a career-ending thing, and he's probably going to come back stronger than ever, hopefully.
Yeah, with sprains, what's interesting is because everybody hears tear and sprain, and like sprains is, I mean, it's a minor tear, and if I'm a Green Bay fan or if I'm in that front office, you're definitely wanting him to rest. You don't want to rush him back on this one. This is now your franchise quarterback. I get it. There's a lot of positives going into the season, but the worst thing you can do is now rush him back to try to win some games, and then he re-aggravates it, and now you basically threw away a whole season. So I would say, I don't even know when their bye week is, but I mean, I would consider sitting him for a while. I know they said 2 weeks. I would definitely look at like 4, just depending on how the schedule lines up and who they're playing. I wouldn't want to also throw him back out there against one of the top defenses either. So, but based on what we saw out of Brazil, which was an interesting spot for a game, an amazing game, which we will dive into. We will dive into that, but very positive that it's not, because I think everybody thought he was done for the year.
Yeah, that was when. Yeah, I'm not a Green Bay fan. I was watching this game. We were at Hunter's rehearsal dinner, and it was on TV, and it was just like, oh no, like everyone in the room, oh no. That was just terrifying. So it's good news, at least a little bit. The question now is Malik Willis. Is he going to be able to play football? Because we saw him in 2 plays, and it looked pathetic. But granted, it was the last 2 plays of the game, so we don't know how that's going to go. Or if they're going to sign somebody else, bring him on board for the short term. So that'll be something to watch. But Jordan Love will come back stronger than ever, so that's good news there. Another kind of good news one, given the situation, is Jordan Addison left the game early. As of now, it's expected that he just sustained a mild ankle sprain. So hopefully he comes back soon. It was devastating to see, because I've got Jordan Addison on all my fantasy teams, and I'm sick of all these injuries already in week 1. But hopefully he comes back and is, again, better than ever.
Yeah, twofold with these. Also, just to put a note, depending on, because obviously we're recording a little earlier and news kind of trickles out. And so depending on when you're listening to this, there might be some additional news and takes. So this is as we have it right now. And as always, even now that my wife is into fantasy, you look at these, and some of these are for your team and some of these might be for your lineup. So this is double duty. Maybe it's your team. Maybe you have to find somebody else to start for a week or 2. But yep. That's what we got.
That's part of the fun of fantasy.
The other wide receiver going down, kind of got rolled up on doing some blocking duty in Chicago's win over the Titans on Sunday, was Rome Odunze. He's undergoing an MRI on his knee. Not really sure what to expect. I haven't heard any levels of like concern at all, other than just he's getting an MRI. It didn't look good. I don't know if you saw the clip of him getting rolled up on. Mm-hmm. It was almost looks like when those guards get rolled up on when they're run blocking or pass blocking. Didn't look great. So we'll see what happens with his, but that one definitely sucks. Chicago needs all the weapons they can get right now.
Have you heard anything about Keenan Allen? Because I know he had that heel issue and he was kind of hobbling around a little bit during the game. I don't know if he ever actually came out of the game, but like a couple times it looked like he could barely walk, but I think he played. But now, we were looking at the Bears preseason and we're like, oh shit, they got some guys. And now after 1 week, we're like, oh no, like who do they have left?
Yeah. Caleb Williams can't score a touchdown. Everybody's dying. Like, what is going on with the Bears? Keenan Allen, I just assume he's going to be forever on injury report. So I don't even know. They should just keep him on there for something at all times just to be safe. Because I'm assuming he's got something going on at all times.
Yeah. And I don't know. Okay. So do you have David Njoku on any of your fantasy teams? On Sleeper, I should say.
No, I don't. I don't have them at all.
If you and if you're listening to this and you use Sleeper for your fantasy leagues, I'm sure you saw something, maybe a screenshot or maybe it happened to your team. But Sleeper did something with their notifications with a couple different players, one of them being David Njoku after he got injured. His status changed from healthy to questionable, and Sleeper sent you about 78 notifications in the course of 20 minutes. And Sleeper went and posted on Twitter and were like, we're going to fire our notifications intern. They were making jokes about it, but it was like, my phone was across the room when this happened. David Njoku goes down, and you would have thought the Pentagon exploded. Like, it was just like, like vibrating like crazy. So David Njoku, apparently he has moved from healthy to questionable, according to Sleeper. I don't know if you saw this injury. I didn't see this actually happen because this game sucked, so I stopped watching.
I watched it, unfortunately, because I'm a glutton for punishment. It wasn't a pretty game, Cowboys Browns. He was rolled up on. I know there's been a point of emphasis. I think it happened in the Bills game as well, where Josh Allen kind of got that hip drop tackle and he was looking for a flag. This one definitely should have been flagged. He caught a good pass. He was running 20 yards down the field and kind of got hip dropped and then got hit up high as well. I think it should have been flagged. I mean, it doesn't. The funny thing is, should it have been flagged? It doesn't make his injury go away. So it's like, right. If that could heal people, then yes, there should be more flags. But it wasn't going to heal him. But I'm not sure. High ankle sprains, I think, is what we're seeing. But I'm not sure that Watson could even get him the ball anymore, anyways, based on how he played. So not real. This might be David's best interest to just sit this one out until the Browns figure out what they're doing.
So one more injury here, Puka Nacua. This is hot off the press. Puka Nacua re-aggravated that knee injury. We saw him leave the game temporarily. He came back in for a couple plays, then they took him out again. Now it looks like he had an MRI. He's going on IR for 4 weeks, which is devastating news for like a whole shitload of people for fantasy football and obviously for the Rams and Puka Nacua. We're going to talk a little bit more about that game, but hopefully he comes back after 4 weeks and is feeling great. Funny news. Maybe funny news, might be serious, but it was funny. Funny
good
video
transition.
Anyway.
Good transition.
Funny video anyway. Tyreek Hill was temporarily detained while driving to the stadium on Sunday for a quote unquote traffic violation, and he was detained and put face down on the concrete for apparently refusing to comply with orders from an officer. Now, there's a lot of hubbub about this one because that officer who was involved in that is placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. And man, people did not hesitate to just start throwing their opinions around about the situation, which is crazy to me because like whether or not something bad happened or whether or not Tyreek Hill was mouthing off and being an idiot, like we don't know. Well, we don't have any of the details at all. So people are just like making up the conclusion to the story when they don't have any of the relevant information.
Yeah, even before the game kicked off, his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, was on there talking about, we're going to look into this. We're going to look into this. This wasn't right. And then you basically had two camps. You had one side that were like, he was in cuffs. They threw him on the ground. What are they doing? And then you had the other side of people in the NFL that just don't like Tyreek Hill anyways because of his past with his girlfriend, beating up his girlfriend and supposedly breaking his son's arm and all this stuff. And so you just have the people that just totally are not even empathizing with him at all. They're like, good, he probably should be arrested anyways. So it's a mixed bag. I would say the only redeeming quality out of this whole thing, we don't know anything, was the touchdown celebration that Tyreek Hill did where he scored on an 80-yard toss and then went into the end zone and then pretended to get arrested, which I thought was like A tier, like just touchdown celebrations for him. Again, we don't know what he said. He could have said, F you, pig, I'm not doing anything. I don't freaking know. It's just not a good look.
There's one thing we know about Tyreek Hill based on the number of kids that he has, and it's that he has no impulse control. So if he's in a bad mood when he's getting pulled over, you have no fucking clue what this guy is going to do. So you could you see the situation where he is acting erratic and maybe they feel like they have to do that. Or also, it's Tyreek Hill. If he runs, you're not going to fucking catch him.
True.
So like you got to lock him up when you can. They probably were like, this is just a precaution because we know that if you run away, we will never see you again.
We literally can't catch you. So this is not going to end well for us. We're just going to watch you run away. Maybe it was he was getting pulled over because one of his 10 kids wasn't properly, buckled in.
He had him like strapped onto the roof of his Lamborghini.
Yeah, he just kind of had him all, just kind of tethered to random spots on his car.
Yeah. He ran out of seats 7 kids ago, so he's just doing what he's got to do. Last thing here before we get into the week 1 games. Tom Brady. made his debut in the booth. Now, admittedly, I was watching Red Zone for most of this game, so I missed a lot of the actual commentary. They cut in every now and again. So I don't know how good he did, how bad he did. It seems like the reviews that I've seen were like, yeah, he's kind of awkward. His voice is kind of annoying, which I sympathize with that, Tom Brady. It's not your fault. You can't control your voice. But what do you think about Tom Brady's performance? Do you think not kind of underwhelming?
This is one of those things where I wish they would have like maybe given him a few games to practice before deciding, because I still think, I mean, after one game, and again, Tom Brady could be better. I don't know if he's going to improve. I mean, obviously this was his first one, but like, I still feel like Greg Olsen was way better.
Greg Olsen was the best one.
He was so natural at it. Tom Brady was just not natural. You could tell he was kind of forcing it. His voice his voice didn't command attention when I was listening to it. And I generally don't like commentating anyways. I'll generally turn it down because I just want to watch the game. I don't really care what anybody has to say. I do think we put way too much stock into who's calling the games. It's like, oh, who's got the call? Like, I don't give a shit. They all kind of annoy me anyways. So it doesn't matter who it is. Like I just want to watch the game. I don't need to know your opinion. And I know a lot of people empathize with that when Mahomes is on and you got Collinsworth like gushing over him every 2 seconds. I get it. As far as Tom Brady, I would say if I were to grade it, I'd give him like a C, maybe. It wasn't anything like crazy. His voice kind of got lost. Nothing impactful. I think you and I were texting and he was talking about like, oh, getting 10 yards is tough and getting 15 yards as an offense is harder and 20 yards is even harder for an NFL offense. And I was just sitting there like, yeah, no shit. Like, I don't know.
Just trying to fill the void. Just trying to say something.
I don't know. Maybe he has more, but his first go had a little bit of room to work.
It's sort of like when you got thrown into the fray having to replace Drew Bledsoe, though. It's like the guy he replaced was so good that he has to be incredible in order for people not to hate him. So I think maybe it was kind of a lose-lose situation, not quite as good at commentating as he is at quarterbacking. So hopefully he improves. I mean, certainly his knowledge of the game is incredible. His work ethic is incredible, so he's going to be prepared. So he's just got to get comfortable being in front of the camera and talking into a microphone the entire time.
I agree. I would say like there's two things I like. I like my commentators if I am going to listen to them. And I think as much as Romo annoys people, I think at least he was giving you a little bit of insight on like how he thought about things as a quarterback. I didn't really get that a lot from Brady, but I almost would have liked that. If he's like, hey, on this one, I would almost check down and do this. Like that would be kind of interesting because I don't need to, I'm watching it and like, I know what the hell's going on. My eyes can see, like, I don't need you to tell me what I'm already looking at. This isn't the radio. So it's either give me some insight that I don't already have or just be funny. So like he needs to pick one of those. Like he either needs to talk shit on Deshaun Watson the whole time and be like, this dude is awful. Like give me that or give me some insight that, the way you thought about the game. But he was just kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of very vanilla. It was just kind of like, he was just kind of there.
He's just got to realize that he is, invincible and he can do or say whatever he wants and he'll always have a job. So he should just take advantage of that.
Oh, I would say just the most god awful things, I think, for a little while, just to see how far I could push it.
Yeah. And that's actually why I like Tony Romo, because you can tell he just doesn't really take it too seriously. And like you said, we're watching the game. If you know anything about football, you can get most of the information with your eyes. So being able to just have somebody back there who's just kind of making it fun, I actually enjoy Tony Romo quite a bit. But the other side of that is Greg Olsen, who was the best of both worlds. I mean, he wasn't too bland. Like Kirk Herbstreit, in my opinion, is the most bland commentator of all time. Like he's got a lot of information, but he makes it feel like a book report. And Tony Romo's the polar opposite of that. And Greg Olsen was the perfect mix. So it's going to be tough to replace him. But here's the thing. I want to talk about something very important with you, and it is the Kansas City Chiefs and their victory, their week one victory over the Ravens. My biggest takeaway from this game is that offense is back. Offense is back in Kansas City, and I will say this. We're going to talk about all the other games, but after watching the entire slate of week one games, my biggest takeaway is Kansas City looked like the best team in the NFL. They looked the most polished. They made mistakes, but they looked the most polished. They looked the most powerful on the offensive side. Their defense is still very good. They just looked like an elite team, which is a far, far cry from what we saw in week one last year.
Yeah, not to be total homer, because I would love to go down that path with you and just be like, they might as well just hand over the trophy already week one. They did look, I mean, it looked good. I mean, you saw what people wanted to see out of the offense last year. and we didn't get that. And I know a lot of people after the game were talking like, hey, your time to get the Chiefs was last year. If you were going to get the Chiefs, last year was the year, because they couldn't really stretch the field. They weren't very dynamic. They were very one-dimensional in their passing game. They couldn't really do a lot, and they still made it happen. And seeing what Xavier Worthy brought to the table with 2 touchdowns in his debut, they were spreading the ball all over the place. The running game looked good. They were pretty creative. And this is against the Ravens. Like, this wasn't just like, hey, we're going to go out and play, no offense, the Panthers, which we saw what happened to them this weekend. This is a team that came in hot. They wanted revenge from that AFC title game. And so they had the full attention, as the Chiefs normally do. And so to see this team kind of put it together, put some sustained drives, score some points, and they didn't even have Hollywood Brown in the mix. Rasheed Rice looked amazing. Kelsey didn't really do anything. I don't know if that's just because he's getting older. I don't know if this is the year we're finally going to see Kelsey kind of have that old man feel where he's just kind of out there stumbling and bumbling around. But the other side of this coin was the Ravens. I think early on they look good. Some of those early drives, you saw some of that the reads that they had to make, where it's like, am I going to have to stop Henry, or am I going to go and let Lamar take the outside? And I think they look pretty dynamic as well. But they also had kind of an old man tight end situation where Likely was getting majority of the receptions, and Andrews was kind of out there, and he had some targets later. But it was a good game. I think what a great way to start the season. I thought it was a fantastic end. It came all the way down to the last possession, the last play, where Likely's toe just happened to be out, and that's how the game ended. And then of course we had the hand wringing it's rigged for the Chiefs already within 1 week, which is, I know you want to get some stuff off your chest on that one, but it was, I thought all in all was a good week. Both teams showed up well. Those are definitely 2 of the top 5 teams in the NFL, maybe 2 of 3, depending on how you want to splice it, but definitely look good.
I'm a little nervous about Lamar, to be honest with you, because obviously he looked incredible. Like, he is definitely a playmaker. He missed a couple throws, but we've always known that about Lamar. Like, you get what you get with him, which is an incredible running quarterback who is capable of making important throws, but doesn't always make them. And you saw that a little bit here, but everybody was talking about in this offseason and going into this game, Lamar Jackson has lost like 20 pounds. Like, he looks skinnier. Like, he just looks kind of small, and he was not afraid in this week 1 game. He was playing this game like it was the AFC Championship. He was not afraid to take hits and initiate contact. And I'm concerned, with 160 some rushing yards or whatever on 12 or 13 carries. Like, he can't do that every week. He's going to get banged up, and then we don't have any idea what this Ravens offense will look like without Lamar Jackson putting the team on his back like he did in this game.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that, though, was the opponent and the magnitude of being week 1 and, going back into the team that knocked you out. I think there's a little bit there. Also trying to right some wrongs over that AFC title game where the Ravens offense just got a ton of shit for not running the ball. And there was definitely more emphasis on putting their head down and running the ball. But I'll agree with you. I mean, the second half of that game was honestly just like Lamar scrambling and making plays. And I think it reminded me of kind of like what the Bills did against the Cardinals, where it was just basically Josh Allen making plays. The only difference is Josh Allen is a freaking man, and he's a tank, and he can handle that, versus Lamar, who I think for the first 30 minutes they commented on his weight like 8 million times. I think by the end of it, everybody knew exactly to like the ounce how much weight he lost, because they would not shut up about it. But I think it was entertaining. But like we saw a lot of this first week of the season, there is rusty, and so as good as things looked like, I think it stands to reason still a little rusty. And I don't know how much of that was Lamar just kind of smoothing over some of that rust by just kind of using his playmaking ability.
Yeah, and the last thing on this game is Mark Andrews. Obviously, everyone is wondering what the fuck. Like, where was this guy? Isaiah Likely looked like a superstar, and we know, with Mark Andrews' past injuries, we've seen Isaiah Likely be effective in this offense, but everyone kind of assumed when they're both on the field, Mark Andrews is the alpha. And from my perspective, obviously with fantasy in mind, I have Mark Andrews on a couple teams. I was watching pretty closely, and it seems like the Chiefs' defensive game plan was eliminate Mark Andrews from the equation. So I'm not totally concerned about him going forward. I think there are going to be other teams where they have to respect Zay Flowers. They don't have the defensive talent that the Chiefs do to be able to cover all these areas on the field. So I think Mark Andrews is going to bounce back a little bit, but fuck, like, it was so frustrating watching him. He put up like 2 fantasy points or something like that, got like 2 targets.
Well, I think that's the theme of week one. Like everybody you were starting, you were like, damn it, where was my production? Um, Likely I thought was more explosive than I remembered. I didn't remember him being able to like run away and pull away from people, but I was kind of impressed with his ability to create on his own. He should have had that game tying touchdown. I mean, it was a great catch, just happened to be toe out. Um, I don't know if we want to comment that it shouldn't have come down to that because Lamar was just missed two wide open guys that he could have hit. But
Yeah, that Zay Flowers one was rough.
That was bad. That was really bad. That was not even close to being on target. But I guess the question out of this game, the last thing is we're talking about the tight ends. Would you, moving forward, gun to your head, do you have to have Andrews or Likely? Who are you going to take rest of the season off of week one? That's an extreme overreaction.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I still think you take Andrews. I mean, Andrews has got a career of data to back up the fact that he is one of the best tight ends in football. I do think now that Likely has shown out in this game, other teams are going to be like, oh shit. And they're not going to have the option to just double team Andrews on every route, which they did. If you look at the routes run and the plays on the field, Mark Andrews still exceeded Likely. I mean, he was out there for a lot of the game. He was running a lot of routes. They just weren't able to throw him the ball. And I think that now that Likely has done what he did, it's just not going to be possible to cover both of them like that. I think Mark Andrews is still going to be the tight end one on this team, but I guess we'll have to see. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for anyway, because I have 0 shares of Likely and a lot of shares of Mark Andrews. Let's move on over to the Packers and Eagles game played in the beautiful dictatorship of Brazil. Where they're not even allowed to. They had NFL reporters like sending texts to their wives, and their wives were tweeting out on their accounts because they're not able to tweet in Brazil. It is against the law there, and you can be fined up to $9,000 per tweet. So, which is like if you tweet like 4 tweets, it's like 3 times the income of the average Brazilian in fines. So I don't know what's going on down there. But obviously the Eagles win this game 34-29. Both teams look decent. Jordan Love looked pretty good before his injury, which happened toward the end of the game. The big question for me here is Jalen Hurts, because he made some great plays. He made some plays that made him look very stupid. I don't want to overreact to this week 1 game, especially this one, because they had to fly like 1 billion hours to this foreign country. So right. I think that if anything's going to screw up your chemistry, it's that. But I'm a little nervous about Jalen Hurts. I do think this offense is just good enough that they're going to be fine, but I wasn't overly overwhelmed with him.
Yeah, depending on your view on this, you're in 2 camps. You're either the year that they went to the Super Bowl was who he is, and you're waiting for him to do that again, or this game is actually who he is, which is the other seasons that he's played, and even into college, kind of how he's played. And that's he struggles to make the on-time throws. He tries to create too much. He'll force things downfield, and in some instances it's good because he has the playmakers to do it, and then in other instances it's like, dude, you have the playmakers, you don't need to force that, like dump it off or throw it away or do something else. And he definitely kind of head scratching throws that he made, turned it over a few times. I don't know, it's hard to argue against historical data with who he is, and this game is kind of who he is. Like, that's just kind of how he plays. I think for the Eagles, I think that in the long term, they're going to be okay because they definitely have the talent. I mean, Saquon looked amazing. AJ Brown looked amazing. Everybody, the rest of the team looked really good. I thought the line looked really good. I was really interested to see, their first game without Jason Kelsey, how the line was going to looked really good. They looked very like in tune with each other. You had some tush pushes. But from a Hurts perspective, I think you're just going to have, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get some big plays, and then you're going to get some plays where he's just going to give the other team an opportunity. And I think that's going to put the Eagles in a lot more close games than they probably want, especially with this roster.
Well, looking at the Packers side of things, obviously Jordan Love's going to be out for a little bit. We don't know exactly how long, but with that in mind, you got to chalk up probably at least a couple extra losses now on their overall record. Is this still a team that's going to be a playoff contender by the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, assuming he can come back and be, healthy and do what he needs to do, or what we know he can do. I think the bright spot for me out of this game was Jaden Reed from the Packers. He was really explosive. I think that gives this Packers offense an edge. Wasn't like super impressed with Josh Jacobs. I think they're still trying to figure out how they work him into the offense. I think he's going to be important to this team, and maybe as it gets colder, they'll figure out how he can fit in. I still think they're a playoff team. Like, obviously the knee injury is going to temper some of those expectations, but I think they still have a legitimate chance to still make the playoffs. But I wouldn't sacrifice rushing Love back into the fold just to do that. I think you kind of got to play it really conservatively. But I was impressed with the playmakers they had. That's still a really good Eagles defense, and they were moving the ball and making plays and doing things they needed to do. And looking at how some of the other NFC games shook out this weekend, I still like the Packers odds, even with maybe the Love on the shelf for 2 to 3 weeks. So I think a lot to like. It sucks. That's like one of the worst feelings. You lost the game, and then your quarterback gets hurt at like the very end, and it didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter. He could have just been on the sidelines. You're like, damn it. It's just the double whammy that you definitely don't want if you're a fan.
It's almost one of the worst things if you're a fan to lose the game and know that that's not even your primary concern. Like, to lose the game, you're not even mad about the loss. You're like, fuck, like, our franchise quarterback is injured now. But I do think something going in their favor is that their team is just so young. Like, even if Jordan Love misses an extended period of time, this season doesn't go that well, like, they're still going to be in this conversation for many years to come just because of how talented and young this roster is. They've done a great job building it up. So I think they're going to be okay. Let's talk about this overtime game with the Lions and the Rams. I thought both of these teams look really good. They're both going to be competitors. I've said before that I think the Rams, this is one of their last chances probably to make a significant playoff push with some of the age of their players, including Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. But as of right now, they look pretty damn good. And they were playing this game down 3 offensive linemen. They lost Puka Nacua halfway through, and they still took this game to overtime. So the question is, are these both really good teams? Are the Lions, maybe they should have won this game by a little bit more? I don't know what your thoughts are.
They're definitely, I think these are definitely 2 of the top teams in the NFC. Definitely up there with the Eagles and the 49ers. I think these are 2 other teams that you're like, hey, they can get things done. Largely just because, I think from the Rams side, largely because of Matthew Stafford. And I think he's just such a calming presence to that team. And then from the Lions standpoint, they just have like a really good roster. I wasn't super impressed with Goff this game. I think he made like a lot of weird throws, didn't seem really sharp. For Stafford seemed really, really sharp. And enjoyed watching him play. It looked like very vintage Stafford with some of the throws he was making. He made some no-look passes, was converting on third downs. I think the only like disappointing thing was, again, the overtime rules. Like, I would have loved to see Stafford get the ball again, because they were going back and forth. The flow of the game was great. And then it was just like the Rams defense was gassed. And so all the Lions really had to do was just kind of lean on them. And they made a couple gash plays, and you could just tell like the wind was totally out of their sails. But I would have loved to see Stafford get the ball in his hands again and see him and Kupp and what they could put together as a response. But definitely 2 of the top teams, but just kind of a disappointing overtime rules.
Having a 1-2 punch of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, with both these running backs were just taking turns in series. So they're getting these huge, massive breaks. Like, they're not at all tired. And then in overtime, you just give the ball to David Montgomery, this gigantic human being who, by the way, has taken like 30 plays off up until this point, and just give him the ball a few times, and he's just going to run the length of the field to score the game-winning touchdown. But yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy to me, number one, that the overtime rules don't match college's overtime rules, because obviously that is way better. Literally everybody agrees on that. The only thing I can think of why they're hesitant to do that is because if these games go on for an extended period of time, it could affect the networking and all that stuff. But at some point, it's like, figure it out, because that is just such an easy change that would make the game so much better. But also, underrated thing that people don't complain about enough is that there's a possibility of tying in the NFL. Why the fuck can 2 teams tie? That doesn't make any sense. Like, this is professional sports. Why are you able to just be like, oh, well, I guess it's a draw? Like, that is the dumbest thing.
And it's the funniest thing ever too, because a lot of, American football, what people watch, versus European soccer or football, one of the things they say is like, oh, it's 1-0 or it's 0-0. That's so dumb. Like, how does that happen? But then you sit there and watch like a random Steelers game on like a Sunday, and it's like 10-3 or it's 10-10, and then they tie and it's over. It's like, literally, that's the exact same thing, probably worse. Probably worse. Yeah. I don't understand that either. Like, how do we still have ties? Like, and people forget, because it happens every year. People has a tie, and then it messes with the standings, and they got to readjust things, and it's like, oh, they're actually in second because they tied. And I agree, college football rules are the best. I love it when the games are like 62-60 for no reason, and it was like 30-30 at the end of the game, and it just explodes because they're each starting from the 30 or 25, and it's like, that's how it should be. Everybody's
100%.
tired anyways. Just give every team a chance now. Everybody's exhausted. Now let's just figure it out.
The NFL's been trying to get more scoring for forever. Like, and they're making all these penalties to protect offensive players because they want offense. Like, okay, this is a great opportunity to get some fucking offense. Let's just switch to the college overtime rules and score some fucking points.
The only
doesn't
other
make any sense.
Yeah, the only other thing I would entertain is like have your kickers start from the 20 and they have to match kick for kick to win it. And so like at the end they're kicking like 55 yarders to win it, and then one guy makes it and the other guy doesn't. That'd be sick.
That would be like, honestly, in today's NFL, you might be pushing 60 some yards. I guess if you're kicking like over and over again like that, maybe they get tired. But if you go to like the max distance, you're talking like 60, 63, 64, 65 yards.
Could you imagine like Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker just like at the end of the game, it's tied and they're just matching kick for kick, just trying to see how far they can go. I mean, it would solve the NFL's problem because people aren't getting hit anymore. You know, you're just hanging out.
The game of football to just
How many NFL games end on just a field goal anyway? So you might as well just do something sweet at the end. Those are my options.
Cool. That a whole game of that would be better than soccer still. So that's
agreed.
One other thing on this, I guess a couple other things. Jameson Williams, we've been waiting for him to break out, but he keeps, tearing his ACL and then going to the casino too much. And now he's finally here. He seems to be okay. He was injured for a brief moment in this game, but came back. But this dude in the open field, he's like Xavier Worthy. Like the dude just gets open and he just seems faster than every single person around him. And he also has some sweet end zone dances, which is nice. So is this the breakout year for Jamo?
It's week one. Hard to say. Yeah. I mean, how many times have we seen guys explode in week one and then they're like, that was basically their whole fantasy production for the whole year? Maybe.
Watkins. All right.
Yeah. What did he have that game? It was like 45 fantasy points or something week one. And then it was like he didn't do anything the rest of the year. Everybody picked him up on the waiver wire and then everybody dropped him probably like 2 weeks later. It's week one, maybe. As long as he can stay healthy, they're going to need him. I guess wait and see. I hopeful because everybody's been waiting for it, so it's good to see. But I would say we need to see it a few more times before you're going to really count on that.
Yeah. The other last thing that I wanted to talk about with the Lions is Dan Campbell, because if you've listened to this show for any length of time, I've had some words with Mr. Dan Campbell, and it's never been personal, despite what all these other idiots on the show will tell you. It's never been personal. It's just decision-making, and his decision-making was perfect in this game. He made no stupid decisions to try and force something, and his team won in overtime because they were the deeper roster, they were the better team. That's all you got to do. I think that maybe looking back at last year and looking back at some of the fourth down decisions that he's made, obviously a lot of them worked. They had a good offense, but many of them didn't work. They lost several games because of it. I think adding some pieces into their defensive secondary has given him the confidence to say, we can put our defense back on the field. Yeah. We can make the smart decision because I trust the defense. Where if you look at the Lions secondary last year, they gave up a lot. And so maybe Dan Campbell's like, I'm not putting the game in their hands. And also now he's kicked a couple field goals. We got a new rookie kicker in there that seems to be able to make some long field goals. So maybe those two pieces were all Dan Campbell needed to just settle down a little bit, start making some sound decisions.
I would agree. If you're a Lions fan, you're like, hey, we crossed a few things off our list. One, kicker has some confidence. Two, this team even has even more grit with an overtime win. If you're Dan Campbell, this is exactly how you draw up a week one win. Like, we have to come back and win it, and then we hold the ball and just ram it down their throats and get the victory at the end. Like, he probably had multiple wet dreams that evening with a dip in his mouth, still asleep in his chair, just like, yeah, that's exactly what football is, baby.
Just
but
come and spit everywhere.
I thought you were going to critique. The only thing I thought was at the end of regulation, I thought if he played it a little better, they could have had more shots at the end zone to try to win it in regulation. Because, getting the ball in overtime was just a coin flip that could have easily gone the other way on him, and the Rams get it, and then Stafford does the exact same thing where they just take it down the field and score, because both those defenses were gassed. So the only critique I would have had was maybe he could have played the play calling a little better, and got some more first downs to have a little bit more cracks at the end zone with timeouts, because I think he still ended with a timeout in his pocket.
He did. Yeah, and the timeout thing was interesting because both at the end of that game, it would have been justified for either Dan Campbell or Sean McVay to call a timeout.
Right.
And I think they were doing sort of a Mexican standoff situation where they're like, I'm not going to be the one to call the timeout because Dan Campbell wanted to just go down and run the time and kick the field goal or score at the end. And Sean McVay, one would think that maybe he would call some timeouts to get a chance to put points on the board before the end of regulation. So they were just kind of staring each other down. That's football IQ over my head. I don't know what the right decision to do there. I don't know what the analytics say, but Dan Campbell appears to have made the right decision on that front. But either way, it was an awesome game. I'm disappointed that we saw one overtime. It's so stupid, but all things considered, for a week 1 win, it was entertaining. Let's talk about a less entertaining game. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson versus the Cowboys.
Gross.
This was terrible. Like, absolutely terrible. People were talking, I don't know if you know this, the Cowboys or the Browns were favored to win this game. I think the line was like 6 points. Like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was significant. What the fuck? Like, this Browns team looks terrible. Deshaun Watson had a QBR of 9. Like, it was so unbelievably bad. I don't even know where, like, Nick Chubb's not going to fix this problem. This is a deeper problem within this organization. Deshaun Watson seems like he has completely forgotten. He seems like, I got my guaranteed millions. I don't give a shit if I'm playing or not. I'm just going to, go through the motions.
If there's one person that's excited that he had a bad game, it was probably Dak, because Dak didn't have a great game either. And the rest of the team just kind of picked it up and they won, and it was pretty convincing, but not because of the Cowboys offense. So he gets a pass this week because of how bad Deshaun Watson was. But if you sat down and watched this game, which again, this was one I watched, it was the throws he was attempting to make made absolutely no sense. He was either throwing it 10 yards over people's heads, or he was holding the ball forever and getting sacked. Like, that's basically all you got. I think going into halftime, they had 1 first down. If my memory serves me correct, like, I think they had 1 first down, and this team is way too talented for that. A QBR of 9 is ridiculous for somebody this talented, especially with this team. They have weapons. They can still move the ball. They can still do some things. And now you have the reports coming out today, which is like A tier. Like, if you're an NFL organization and you have dirt on your quarterback and you want to get rid of him, you wait for it to come out until you want to get rid of him because of his big contract. In the Browns, now there's reports where he's getting sued again for inappropriate conduct. He went on a date with some woman. She's suing him for whatever, which I think basically is just the Browns being like, hey, can you go ahead and sue him now so we can get rid of him for cause and not have to pay him all this money? That's the direction we're going. The Browns are just going to try to get rid of him as soon as they can, because they can't keep going on like this, and they need to free up some of that cap space so they can make another move. But it was bad. It was like, there's nothing even really to talk about this game other than it was just like 2 bad quarterback plays, and one was just so bad that everybody's going to just talk about Deshaun Watson and how shitty he was.
Well, Deshaun Watson, as bad as he was, did break a record this game. He went 0 for 10 when passing for more than 15 or more air yards, which is the worst record on throws of that distance in the history of the record keeping of air yards. So, which I think started in like 2005. So it was a historically bad game. And honestly, his play on the field is not their biggest problem. The way he's impacting this locker room has got to be their biggest problem. Like, they've got to get him out of there just for the sake of the rest of the team not being at each other's throats and being willing to come together. Lucky for them, they've got maybe the greatest backup in the history of football in Jameis Winston. And so we might start to see Jameis make an appearance at some point, but I don't know. I don't have anything to say about anything more to say about the Browns. So let's move over to another disappointing performance that turned out pretty good, which is Caleb Williams. He played really bad. This offense looked rough, but luckily their defense and their special teams picked up the slack, and they ended up winning the game. Caleb Williams is now only the second quarterback in NFL history to have over 25 pass attempts and throw for a total of under 100 yards. The first quarterback is Desmond Ridder for the Falcons last season. So, yeah, this was a pretty bad game from Caleb Williams. He looked like he thought he was more athletic than everybody else, like he was in college. And I don't know if he knows this, but that's not the case in the NFL.
No, this game was just like again, another tale of like who can be the shittier quarterback. You had Levis like scrambling into pressure and then throwing interceptions, and you had Caleb Williams scrambling and not being able to get away, or throwing like just really terrible balls. Nothing was on time. These are things we talked about in the offseason. These were the things that we talked about that scared us about Caleb Williams. We said, if this doesn't work out, or if he doesn't have success, you're going to point to his inability to make throws on time. And he always resorts to the scramble drill, which in college is fine, but in the pros, this is what you get. NFL defenses and offenses are built to be on-time throws, on-time reads. And if you can't do that, you can't have sustained drives. And that's what they ran into. They just could not sustain drives. And so thank God his defense bailed him out and special teams bailed him out, because he definitely was the participant in the group project where they didn't do anything, but they got an A. And so he's like, oh, cool. Yeah. Nice.
Do you think he's going to paint his nails next week? Or you think this was like, okay, now I'm probably not going to do this anymore?
I don't know. He should just paint the plays on his nails or something, because whatever he was doing was not working. He needs to figure that out in a hurry. Otherwise, the Bears are going to be hurt. And then what we talked about earlier with O'Dunes, like, and Keenan Allen, maybe it's like they're going to need him. They're going to need him to make plays. I thought it was funny because he tweeted when he went to the Bears, he tweeted the punter for the Bears and said, hey, you're not going to have to be punting a lot. And I think he ended up punting like 6 or 7 times, and actually was like probably one of the better players on the team because of how well he was punting.
Yeah, it was rough. And just a little note for Bears fans. I know you got the win, so you don't have to be too upset about it, but just something to keep in mind that might keep you up at night. Caleb Williams and Justin Fields in their respective games combined for 20 drives with 0 touchdowns.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's scary. No, I'm still pretty high on the Bears. I think Caleb Williams, we got to remember, there's a lot of hype going into him. He's a rookie. He has never played in a real game. His only experiences in preseason games against third-string defenses. I think he'll figure it out. This offense is sort of like the Eagles. They got too many weapons to not be at least above average. I think they're going to figure it out and be a good team. And I do still think there's a very good chance Caleb Williams is, after this season, the best quarterback in Bears history.
Yeah, if probably not as much Caleb, but probably the coaching staff for the Bears. Like, stop giving him too much to work on right now. Give him some easy reads. Let him make some good throws. He has the arm talent to do it, but just let him focus on a few things right now. But I don't know if Eberflus is smart enough to do that. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Because of time here, I'm going to skip around a little bit. I do want to talk about one more pathetic attempt at playing the quarterback position in Daniel Jones. This is tough for me because I have been on record saying Daniel Jones, he doesn't have any weapons. He doesn't have an offensive line, which is still true, by the way. That's, I wasn't wrong about any of that. But at some point, we got to be like, okay, you got to give us something here. And he did not give any Giants fans any hope whatsoever. The Giants right now, their front office is calling the Browns front office and saying, hey, whatever dirt you get on Deshaun Watson or however you got that information, we need your contacts because we need to figure out how the fuck to get rid of Daniel Jones. It was bad, dude. Since signing his contract, Daniel Jones has thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns on his team. And granted, he was injured a lot of the time, but that is ridiculous for being, at the time, the highest paid quarterback in football.
Yeah, that's one of those stats you don't want to have hanging over your head. That's one of those things you want to get rid of. I'm a fan of you advocating for the Giants of taking out like a front page ad in the New York Post being like, have you been assaulted by Daniel Jones in the last few years? Are you looking to sue him? Please call us. And it's just the Giants front office number trying to doctor something up. This is another game I watched. I was like, it was a bad week for offense, just top down. I think that's the highlight of week one. Bad offense, just really bad offense. But he looked just dog shit. Like, it was bad. Like, that was not even, there wasn't like one redeeming quality. Like, at least good quarterbacks, you're like, all right, he was trying. There were some good throws. They were dropping balls. The offense wasn't clicking. He had no time. There wasn't even any of that. He just sucked. Like, that's just the only thing you can say is he just sucked.
Well, Malik Neighbors was asked about it, and his exact quote, I guess I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said something to the effect of, I don't know what's going on back there. It's like,
I mean, that's a sign to every NFL fan. I don't know what's going on back there.
It's tough to have that complete lack of chemistry after 1 week. It's like it's all falling apart immediately. Like, this is going to get so bad, it seems like. Yeah,
and Dable already came out and said he's still the starter, so I don't know how long that charade's going to go, but that's not good. And then everybody, you know what sucks is when you have a game like this and then you are part of like the hard knocks or whatever, and everybody goes back and you have your GM being like, no, we got to build around Daniel Jones and we have to walk away from Saquon. And it's like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be like, Saquon was our best player. Daniel Jones, I'm pretty sure we could recreate with like a homeless guy. So let's at least keep the guy that we can't recreate, and then we could figure it out. But it's, they make these financial decisions, and they're businessmen, and they invest in areas, and they got to see it through to the bitter end. And unfortunately, I think for the front office, for the Giants, this one's probably not going to end very well for them, as many are already calling for their heads.
Yeah,
the bright spot though. Okay, flip side though. Let's talk about Sam Darnold real quick before we move on, because I was actually like, whoa, who the hell is this dude out here? I think at one point he was 10 for 10. He was making throws all over the field. Ended up being the Pro Fantasy Focus highest graded quarterback, which, some people don't put any stock in that. But still, I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card for week one, where Sam Darnold was going to be one of the highest graded quarterbacks at the end of the week. And so shout out to the Vikings. Maybe you have something here. Maybe you can roll with this for a little while. I know the JJ McCarthy news wasn't great, and the whole offseason for them was not great. But I think having a week one performance like this was at least maybe a little bit therapeutic for them.
Yeah, 100%. And, I made my concessions about Daniel Jones, so I'm going to pat myself on the back about Sam Darnold, because nobody expected him to be great. But given the weapons on this offense, I mean, this is arguably the best team that he's ever been a part of, that he'll be able to play for a sustained period of time. So you can see how, even if he's not exceptional, he's going to be good enough. And there's still a lot of question marks. It's only 1 week. It's still Sam Darnold. But I think that this gives them so much confidence that they're like, okay, Justin Jefferson's not going to want to jump off a bridge because we don't have JJ McCarthy out there, right? So you're at least going to keep your offense together and hopefully make some plays and compete in this very tough division. So I still think it's going to be tough for him. Yeah. But being able to get some offensive production is huge for this team.
Yeah, I agree. Aaron Jones looked good. I think this might be one of the first time for Darnold where it's like, there's no expectation. I think, being a first round pick, that comes with a lot of expectation. And I think a lot of people maybe have written him off. And so, I mean, good for him. I think he gets the chance to just go rip it. And what a solid combo of wide receivers to just go rip it to. So shout out to the Vikings. Looks like you may have a little something there.
If you're a quarterback, when in doubt, just get Justin Jefferson on your team, because he makes you look really good. All right, so let's get to the exciting stuff here. We'll run through this real quick before we run out of time. Kickoff Karaoke Week 2. Again, the loser at the end of the season has to sing the national anthem for everyone to hear. Allen currently, after Week 1, is in the lead by 1 game. So you, as of right now, are safe. It's a long season. Yeah, lots of stuff coming. So let's kick things off here with the Bills playing the Dolphins in Miami. The Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites. Slapdog, for the record, is taking the Dolphins. He sent us his picks because he's not here. So I'm going to ask you, are you taking the Dolphins too?
No. I have to take the Bills, unfortunately. I think over the last few years, Josh Allen is shown that he kind of owns the Dolphins in these spots. This is a Thursday night game. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on it. And until the Dolphins and Tua can prove otherwise, I'm going to stick with the Bills.
All right, here's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking at the forecast in Miami for next week. It is going to be, all right, this might change my pick a little bit. Here's my thought process. It's hot as balls in Miami, and Miami has swindled the NFL by allowing every team that they play to swelter on their sideline in the sun while they sit in the shade. So Miami's home field advantage is every bit as big as Arrowhead or as the Seahawks Stadium with their crowds, because Miami's home field advantage is you might get a heat stroke if you're playing us here. But it's going to be 90 degrees, but there's a chance of rain for that game. I still think I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I think the home field advantage, I think Tyreek Hill, I think this offense, Tua was the only quarterback on Sunday's games that threw for over 300 yards. He didn't look amazing, but he looked pretty damn good, and they've got too many weapons, home field. This one is close for me, and Josh Allen, by the way, had to put on his Superman cape in order to win that game against the Cardinals.
I'm going to say something here, because we didn't get to talk about the preview episode. I think Josh Allen's going to win the MVP, and I think largely because he's going to have to put up video game numbers for this Bills team to make it to the playoffs, but I think he's good enough to do it. And so I think this is going to be another one of those games for him.
All right. We will see. Let's move on to the Bears playing at the Texans. Texans are 6.5-point favorites. Not surprising after we watch this Bears offense try and perform. Slapdog is taking the Texans. Allen?
I'm also going to take I'm going to take the Texans. It's going to be low scoring. I think the Bears defense is for real, but I don't know if that offense is for real yet. But I trust CJ Stroud more, so I'm going to take the Texans to cover. That's a healthy number, still 6.5. That's a lot for an NFL game. But I just seeing how inept the Bears offense was, I don't think they're going to fix that. And with some pieces hurt, I don't see that happening in 1 week.
Yeah, and just by the way, when you're listening to this, there's a lot of days left before these games are played, so these numbers could change a little bit. We're basing this off what the numbers are right now. So 6.5. I tend to agree with you, though. I think until we see it from the Bears, there's no reason to think they're going to be different than the Bears teams that we've seen in the past. So I think on paper they're better, but this offense hasn't performed yet after 1 week. We'll see if they can fix that, but CJ Stroud has proven it time and time and time again. So I think if they play this game 100 times, the Texans win 95 of them. So I think I got to go with the Texans as well. Move on to the Rams and Cardinals here. This is a fun one for Slapdog, who is a Cardinals fan. The Rams are playing at the Cardinal Stadium. Rams are only 1.5-point favorites, which is kind of interesting, but the Cardinals did look pretty good. Slapdog is being humble, and he's taking the Rams. Who are you taking?
I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna take the Cardinals. I think they looked really good against the Bills. I think the Bills are still a really good team, and this is purely just me banking on the Rams having a hangover game after the overtime in Detroit. I think they're just going to be limping a little bit into this game. Nacua being out. I think the Rams obviously are still really good, but I like the Cardinals to win outright.
That's the most fun option, so I'm going to take it as well. I'm going with the Cardinals, and
yes,
my primary reasoning is...
Let's do this to him. So we have to cheer on the Cardinals, and he can't. This is perfect.
Yes. My primary reasoning is this Rams team's beat up. Like, I don't know what version of the Rams we're going to see. Obviously they competed well against Detroit, but, there's only so much they can do with all these backup linemen and switching pieces around all over the place. They played a really hard-fought game. I think the Cardinals looked good. So I want the Cardinals to be good. So I am hoping that they're going to be good in this game. And then finally here, finishing things off, Steelers at Broncos, maybe the most exciting game of week 2. So we decided we're going to go ahead and talk about this one. The Steelers are 2.5-point favorites, despite being the away team. Slapdog is taking the Steelers because he doesn't like to bet, against Vegas ever. So with that in mind, who are you taking?
I'm going to take the Steelers to win 3-0. That's my prediction. It's going to be disgusting, but I'm going to take the Steelers.
Yeah. The Broncos Bo Nix looked bad.
He didn't look great.
In the preseason, it was like, oh, all right, this guy can do it. And then you put like a real defense out there, and he just started slinging it around like Jameis Winston, just throwing it God knows where. So I agree. I think the Steelers, they're going to finish pretty close to 500, just above 500. Their defense is always good. TJ Watt was phenomenal in week 1. Yep. So I tend to agree. I think I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm going to put the over-under at... Right now, the over-under is 37.5 points. I'm definitely taking the under on that. I think it's going to be like a 10-13 game.
Yeah, it's going to be under. It's going to go way under. You should be like, this is going to be a punt fest or a turnover fest, one of the two, but it's not going to have points.
Might break the record for the most safeties in a game, which we almost saw in week 1. We're going to hit the 3 or 4 mark this time.
That's true.
But that is it. That's all the time we've got. Thank you very much, Brainiacs, for tuning in. As always, please go over to all our social medias. We're on every platform on Earth, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or Spotify. All of those things. Give us a follow, share some stuff, tell your friends and family. Of course, make sure to go to ericashealthypet.com. Use promo code LB20 to get 20% off and support the show. And with that in mind, we will talk to you next week. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.